Hi, I'm Keith Cooper from Northlight Images, and in this short video I'm going to be taking this Pixma Pro-200 out of the box and setting it up. This accompanies a setup article on the Northlight Images website, and there will obviously be a detailed review in due course, but I have to set it up and get it working first. One of the first things to note is that there's actually an important indicator on the top of the box here that points out how to get it out of the box. So don't just charge ahead, take it out of the box, ripping this top open here. The whole top of the cardboard box comes off, and the printer just pulls out of a plastic bag that's inside it. So let's go. I've cut through the tape, and we can just lift this top off. Inside the box we've got some sample sheets of paper. We've got what looks like a CD holder for printing on printable CDs, and we have here the ink carts that are going to be installed. We have a print head which we'll need installing, assorted paperwork, and a Pro-200 disc. Not often you get discs with printers these days. Here are the ink carts. Notice there's 8 of them with this printer. Pro-200's a dye-based ink, different from the Pro-300 I looked at recently, which has more carts and uses a pigment-based ink. But I'll be covering that in more detail in the review. Here are some of the parts from the top. We'll put these aside for the moment. I'm not going to be using the CD to install. There is actually a link here to a startup web page. You get quite a bit of paperwork here because it's in dozens of different languages. The printer itself is in a plastic bag which is designed to actually take the weight of the printer, so I can pull the printer out of this box using just the plastic bag. One thing about any new printer these days is you get an awful lot of packing to remove. Essentially there are bits of orange tape all over the place. Remove every bit of orange tape and every bit of orange plastic because they're packing. If it's this colour orange, then it goes. So this is the paper tray. There are bits of orange plastic everywhere. Fortunately, it does usually have a pull tab, but expect to collect a lot of orange tape. Having recently set up and tested the Pro-300, the similarities are quite obvious in the overall design. I will be comparing the 200 and 300, but that'll be after I've done a review and after I've had a good test of how this prints, how the 300 prints, to see if there are any obvious reasons that you might choose one over the other. Now, during setup I'm going to have to put the print head and print cartridges in here, but at the moment we'll just concentrate on getting the orange bits off. I can see the connections on the back here. There's an Ethernet socket, USB socket, and mains plug goes in there. Anyway, that's it set up for that. It's now a matter of powering it on and following the instructions on the screen. As with any printers like this, you power them up before you connect up the network connections. So even if I was using a USB connection to the laptop I've got here, or connecting it to Ethernet, you power it up, you set the printer up first on its own. There we go. The usual range of whirring, clunking noises you get from any new printer. First thing, I'll pick English to use. It can be tempting to set other people's printers to a foreign language, but we'll use English. Nice little animation running here, showing the process of lifting the lid here, putting the print head in, and then putting the cartridges in place, and they just snap in place. So I'll do that now. There we go. This is where the print head goes inside. The print head assembly comes in this sealed bag and just clips in place. So if you've used a Canon printer before, this should be quite familiar. It's quite delicate. You shouldn't touch the print part, but the procedure is quite a robust one. So I'll just go ahead and install it. Here's the print head. The areas you don't want to touch are conveniently covered by this orange plastic. And as before, no orange plastic remains in the printer when it's in use. There's a grey bar that you lift, flips up like that, and the print head is going to go in that slot. You can see some contacts which will match up with the contacts on this, and the print head itself, where the ink comes out onto the paper, is at the bottom here. So we'll take this off. Off it goes. And it really does just drop into place. Push the locking bar down and it locks the print head in place. It's now a matter with this of putting the inks in. Now there are coloured indicators on the top here to make sure that you put the right inks in the right place. Magenta, pale cyan, yellow, black, grey, pale magenta, light grey and cyan. That's the mix of inks you've got. The inks themselves are sealed in plastic, which will need removing just before they clip in. Now you don't actually need to put them in order, so just pull the orange tab, off comes the plastic, another orange tab that needs removing, and this one is yellow. Give it a pull and off it comes. There's a chip here which you should try not to touch, and the ink cartridge goes in here, drops in there and clicks in place. And I now need to do that for the rest of them. I would just notice that this orange tab on here takes quite a bit of sideways force to break off, and there's quite a distinct snap there. Right, now the last one goes in. Cyan. There we go. The display now says shut the top and leave it be. The printer now says it's performing initial adjustments. Do not power off the printer for a minute or so. What I would say is whenever you set up a new printer, whatever you do, don't pull the power or switch it off or do anything whilst it's doing this setup process. If there is one point in the life of a printer where it can get terminally confused, it is during this setup period. At best, you may end up wasting ink. At worst, you may generate problems with the printer. So just leave it be, let it carry on doing all its whirring noises and everything else that it does, and wait and see what happens. At this point, I need to align the print head. Remember that with the Canon printers like this, the print heads are fitted when you set the printer up. That means there's no factory adjustment. Now everything locks together very nicely, but there are slight adjustments can need doing. And at this point it says I need 2 sheets of A4 or letter size plain paper to do the alignment. The alignment process is automatic, but you can leave this and do it later. But I would say leaving it, you're likely to forget it. Do it. It makes a difference to print quality. Some plain paper. I'm going to just select OK here. Load 2 or more sheets of A4 or letter size plain paper in the top feed. Now the top feed on this, the paper is fed centrally, so there are 2 sliding guides that move in and out to fit the size of paper you're using. I've moved them apart, set them to this A4 paper. There is, like most things, there's a guide on here if you're unsure of this, but just fits that in there. And it's now performing an alignment to improve print quality. Please wait momentarily. Everything with Canon printers is wait momentarily. Someone likes that word. It says it'll take about 4 minutes. Fortunately, inside the print head mechanism, there is a sensor. So what's happening here is a pattern is being printed. The printer knows what the pattern should look like. It measures it with the sensor and it uses that to work out whether the print head is correctly aligned or not. If it isn't, which it almost certainly will be slightly out, purely because I've just dropped it in here, it will then do electronic adjustments that compensate for that slight imbalance. There's no physical adjustment going on, it's all done by software and whatever. But the essence of it is you get much less banding, you get other better feed of paper, and your image quality is usually improved. Now, if you get of a printer like this, if you suddenly find you're getting banding and things, the normal thing is to wonder if there's any, if you're out of ink or something, but it's worthwhile just running an alignment check every so often, particularly after you've replaced the first few cartridges, as everything beds in, just to get your optimum print quality. Most noticeable in glossy high detail prints. If you start seeing some banding and you haven't done this setup, do it. I'm going to connect initially by USB up to my Mac laptop. I've got wired LAN, Ethernet, which is through the network, or I can do Wi-Fi. I've selected USB. It says do not connect the USB cable yet. Refer to the manual and continue setup. And this is the bit where we go over to the computer. Now I've opened up the Canon website for the Pro-200, and this actually gives you full setup details. So if you're unsure about the stuff I've shown in the video, this also has some good coverage of it that is quite helpful. Now here's a video, and there's the orange tape again, showing you all the bits you need to remove. And as I say, this is well done, and certainly a lot easier than many printer setups I've done in the past. You'll need to download some software to connect up to a computer. Now I'm using a relatively oldish Mac laptop here, so I'm not going to go into great details because it'll be different on new Macs and it'll be different on Windows machines. I've fired up the software and it brings down the software it needs, drivers, whatever, and it does it all for you, and it installs. You get a choice. You can connect with USB or wireless, and it does all of these quite reliably. I had no problems. I didn't need to do any special networking stuff. It just did it. I'm using a USB connection in my first setup here, and it even points out where the USB sockets are and what to do with things. This is the point where you connect up the cables to the printer. Now I've told it to install a driver and it's done so, and this next bit is purely a Mac problem that I know of. You'll notice that there are actually two drivers installed. One of them, however, has the dreaded word AirPrint next to it, and I say dreaded because the number of inquiries I get from people who've accidentally installed an AirPrint version of the driver and they go to print and then wonder where all the print settings have gone. It's because you're using an AirPrint driver, so effectively you want to delete that, but I'll go into this in more detail in the sort of written version of this. Anyway, that's it set up. So there we have it, one Setup Pro-200. I've just printed a sheet of graph paper from the template option. Probably not the cheapest way of printing off graph paper, but it is very useful if you need something in a hurry for this. But anyway, it's set up, it works. I'm going to be doing some other videos about using different materials through this and a full review of the printer, and as I mentioned earlier, a comparison with the Pro-300 as well. The two are very similar, but there are some important differences. Anyway, hope that's been of use. Thanks very much.